Part 1, Sagittarius 2026 Horoscope. Something unexpected is coming. There is something disturbing about the way your life has been feeling lately, Sagittarius. Not tragic enough to collapse. Not beautiful enough to stay. Just empty in places that used to feel alive. And the strange part is, you noticed the shift before anyone else did. Somewhere between the late nights, the unanswered thoughts, the moments of staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. while your phone screen slow. Why faded to black, you started realizing something terrifying. The life you prayed for may no longer be the life you actually want, and once that realization enters a Sagittarius mind, nothing stays the same for long. Because you are not the type of person who can emotionally survive inside a life that no longer feels real. You can pretend for a while, you can smile through it, travel through it, joke through it, but eventually, your restlessness starts becoming louder than your distractions. That is exactly what begins happening in 2026. Not all at once. Quietly. Like rain hitting the window during a conversation that suddenly changes your entire future. And what makes this year dangerous is that the biggest shift of your life may begin with something incredibly small. One message, one unexpected conversation, one person watching your story after months of silence. One moment where your intuition whispers, pay attention. Because before summer, Sagittarius experiences a moment that feels almost staged by the universe. At first it seems insignificant. A random encounter, a delayed reply, a strange coincidence. Hearing someone's name unexpectedly while thinking about them seconds earlier. But later, you realize that was the exact moment your old life started ending, and deep down, part of you already feels it coming. That explains the emotional exhaustion lately, not physical exhaustion. The kind where you scroll for hours, switch between apps, talk to people, watch videos late into the night, and still feel emotionally empty afterward. Because your problem was never boredom. It was disconnection. Disconnection from yourself, from your purpose, from the version of your life that no longer emotionally fits who you are becoming. And Sagittarius feels that misalignment harder than most signs. Because you are meant to move forward. Mentally. Emotionally. Spiritually. But lately, it feels like part of your life has been emotionally frozen in place. And the more you try forcing yourself to stay connected to it, the heavier everything becomes. Especially around relationships. There is someone connected to your energy entering 2026, and no matter how much time passes, their presence still lingers in strange ways. You may think about them randomly while driving at night. You may almost text them, then delete the message before sending it. You may hear a song, walk past a location, see their birthday unexpectedly, and suddenly feel that familiar ache in your chest again. But here is the shocking part. The person you miss may not actually be the person you love. You may be grieving the version of life you imagined with them. The future you build inside your head, the emotional safety you hoped they would eventually become, and realizing that changes everything. Because Sagittarius, you were never truly afraid of losing them. You were afraid of starting over, afraid that letting go would force you to face how much of yourself you abandoned trying to make something work. And 2026 destroys that survival version of you completely. That is why this year feels emotionally intense before it even begins. Your intuition became louder because your mind got tired of lying to itself, and lately, the signs have become impossible to ignore. You feel different in familiar places, you feel emotionally disconnected during conversations that used to matter, you laugh, but something underneath the laughter feels absent. And sometimes, you sit in complete silence after everyone leaves, feeling like your real life hasn't started yet. That feeling matters. Because for Sagittarius, emotional numbness is often the final stage before transformation. And transformation enters your life aggressively in 2026. Especially near the middle of the year. Around that time, something changes suddenly. An opportunity appears where nothing existed before. A person says something that completely reframes your future. You almost ignore it at first. That's the strange part. The doorway you've been waiting for may not look dramatic when it arrives. It may happen on an ordinary day. While sitting alone in your room, walking through an airport. Looking out a car window during heavy rain. Checking your phone half asleep late at night. And for a few seconds, everything becomes quiet. That moment matters more than you realize. Because Sagittarius is entering a year where intuition becomes more accurate than logic. You will feel things before they happen. You will outgrow people before they leave. You will sense endings before conversations even begin. And honestly, that awareness becomes emotionally exhausting sometimes. Because part of you still wants to hold on to what feels familiar, even when familiar no longer feels healthy. That internal war becomes one of the defining emotional themes of your year. Freedom versus attachment. Movement versus stability. Running versus healing. And nobody around you fully understands how exhausting that conflict has become. People see Sagittarius as fearless, but what they don't see is how deeply you fear emotional stagnation. You can survive heartbreak, you can survive chaos, you can survive uncertainty. But staying trapped inside a life that no longer inspires you, that slowly destroys you from the inside. And lately, you've been feeling the destruction quietly happening beneath the surface. Especially at night. Especially during moments when the world becomes still enough for your real thoughts to catch up with you. That's when the overthinking begins. That's when memories return. That's when you start questioning whether the version of yourself everyone knows is even the real you anymore. And somewhere in the middle of 2026, that question becomes unavoidable. Because something happens that emotionally wakes you up. Suddenly, the routine you tolerated feels unbearable, the conversations feel repetitive. The emotional inconsistency from certain people becomes impossible to excuse anymore, and one specific realization changes everything. Some people only love the version of you that stays small. That realization hits Sagittarius harder than expected, because you spent years trying to make yourself easier to understand. Less intense, less restless. Less emotional. Less complicated. But shrinking yourself never actually made you happy. It only made you lonelier. And 2026 is the year loneliness stops feeling safer than vulnerability. That is the real transformation happening here. Not external success, internal honesty. Because once Sagittarius becomes emotionally honest, their entire life changes direction almost immediately. New people appear. Old cycles collapse, unexpected opportunities open. And the strange part is, everything starts happening after you stop chasing what was emotionally draining you. That's the lesson. You outgrew the life you fought so hard to keep, and your future begins the moment you finally admit that to yourself, especially before autumn. Because there is a powerful shift approaching near the second half of 2026. A move, a sudden decision. A separation, a new beginning disguised as chaos. At first, it feels like everything is becoming unstable. Plans change unexpectedly. Someone disappoints you deeply. A truth surfaces that cannot be ignored anymore. But later, you realize that moment was actually liberation, because the universe was removing what your fear refused to release willingly. And once that happens, Sagittarius begins feeling something unfamiliar again. Hope. Real hope. Not forced positivity. Not temporary excitement. The kind of hope that appears when your life finally starts aligning with who you actually are. And the most powerful part, this transformation changes the way you love forever. Because by the end of 2026, you stop begging for emotional clarity from people who enjoy confusing you. You stop chasing inconsistent energy. You stop abandoning yourself just to avoid being alone. And for the first time in a long time, you begin choosing peace over emotional survival mode. But before that future fully arrives, there is still one final chapter that must close, one final truth Sagittarius must face. And when it happens, your entire understanding of your past changes forever.